Hey friends, I took a walk in the woods in Missouri the other day, and I've just been thinking about when we have dreams and visions and hopes for our lives, and I wanted to chat a little bit about that while we take a walk. So, will you stroll with me through the woods of Missouri while we talk about our dreams and our hopes and what our heart wants? So we're walking through the woods in Missouri right now. I'm going to give you a little backstory about my life and where I came from. So I grew up in Silicon Valley of California. It's very metropolitan. There isn't much wildlife. You can definitely find nature areas, but it's not like when you live in places like this where you have land and animals. And it's always sort of been a dream of mine. My grandfather, he owned property up in Oregon, and I remember as a kid spending so much time just out in the woods and just exploring and having a great time. And that's something I've always wanted to give my kids. And through most of my adult life, which has been about 17 years now, been living on my own, I've desired to have that for myself and for my kids. I really feel such peace in the woods and around animals, but I'm so unfamiliar with it, being that I didn't have a lot of access to it. I'll get a little dog shot there. So my family and I are just capitalizing on time to spend with our friends and family in places where they have land. And it's been a dream of mine to be able to provide that for my kids. But that can be really hard, to uproot your family and move. There's so many things to think about and things to consider: housing prices, jobs, the cost of living. Where we currently live, the cost of living is really high, and it's very suburban. And where my friends live, I'm currently sitting in front of 4 or 5 cows who are just staring at me through their pasture, through the gate. I have ducks and chickens that are clucking in the background, and I find that is really where my heart finds peace. And there's a yearning I have to have that, but it's not incredibly easy to just make that happen. Especially for my life, I'm settled in a place that it's not financially feasible for me to have that. So I need to move to a place where the cost of living was lower, but then I'm moving my family away from our extended family, as well as away from their friends, from what I've known for over half my life. But I have this dream and I have this desire in my heart to have this for my kids. This little creek watering hole was on our friend's property, and it was so beautiful, and the kids were playing and splashing and just having a wonderful time. And it's the end of November here, so in Colorado that is not capable, because the water is so cold and the air is so cold. And it's not warm here necessarily, but it's tempered enough that the kids could spend time outside and have fun splashing in the water and exploring and playing and finding crawdads and chasing little fish and just being outside. And that's really what I want for my family. But how do I get there? And what do I do? That's what I have to figure out. I have to figure out if it's the best choice for all the members of our family. I have to figure out if it's the best thing for my extended family. And it's hard. You see all the little fish. The kids were trying to catch those, and it was just hours of fun with them trying to catch those little fish and never being successful. But my heart yearns for that. It yearns for animals. I really hope to be close to animals. I've always had a dog or a cat in my house, but not livestock or chickens, goats, a hobby farm, things like that. I want my children to understand where our food comes from and have a value in living slow and carefully, in valuing what you have and investing in resources. And where we are now, that's a challenging thing to give them. We're in a suburban neighborhood with an HOA and a school district that really dictates a lot of what you do. And although that's not a bad life, that's a beautiful life too. I just would really love to have this life. And it can be really hard in this waiting period, and I think that's just why I wanted to share a little bit about this. Because in this waiting period, it is so hard. It's hard to not want to jump and just do something that might be reckless. It's hard to think through all of the challenges and be creative in our thinking. We're having to really prioritize what are our needs, what are our wants, what can we be creative with, and making sure that it's the best choice for our family. And with all of those decisions, it feels like every decision hinges on the other decisions, and then once you make one decision, it changes all the other decisions, and it can feel quite overwhelming. And with that overwhelming feeling, it may not be God's vision that our family has something like this. And He may provide other opportunities in different ways, even in the place that we are, to have the things that my heart desires. Or He might change my heart's desire altogether. But the reality is that we have to dream, and we have to figure out what we want. That's really important, that we're living a life that we want and not that somebody else wants. And that we are following our dreams even when they're big and scary. And throughout my life, I found that many times the dreams that I start with are not the dreams that I end up achieving or wanting in the end. But it's the journey and the exploration of figuring those things out that brings the comfort, that brings the joy, that brings the excitement when you finally get to a place. And remembering to be thankful for the things that you prayed for. And not just continually striving for the next thing, but being content where you are, while also moving back to a place, or moving to a place where you are growing and following your dreams. So that's my thoughts. Have you had dreams in your life? I'm sure you have. What do they look like? Are they scary? Did you get to a point where you felt like it was too much to even dream? I think in those places we need to take small steps to start thinking through what gives my heart peace. And at that point, when we find out what gives our heart peace, we can start working towards that and be creative in your thinking. How might I be able to make that happen for myself and my family? How can I live in line with the person that God created me to be? And that really is when we become the most at peace. And really, when we're the most able to be used by God, is when we're not just putting our heads down and grinding, but we're being intentional. As I look at these pieces of moss, I'm just captured by the beauty of the intricacy that God puts for us to stop and see. We can easily walk by these things. And yet, if we stop and look, we can see the beauty in them. This little watering hole in this tree was so sweet. Just thinking about this tree growing every year without anyone noticing it. But then you stop and you're able to notice it. And it was growing beautifully, with or without you looking at it. But it's there for you to be able to see it. And to me, that feels amazing. That brings my heart joy. So as I walk through these woods and explore with my family, and as I sit here today surrounded by different animals and people that I love, I'm just continually reminded to slow down and enjoy the beauty that is around me and the things that God has to offer to me. And practically, I need to move. I need to make choices and make decisions to help myself to get to a place where I am content and happy. And the contentment really does come right where you are, which is hard because right where you are might not be your dream. But if you're not content, at least in some regard where you are, then once you get your dream, you're still not going to be content. So how do you get contentment? And don't allow other people to tell you what your contentment looks like or doesn't look like, but really go deep into what you want. You are beautifully and wonderfully made, and you have desires and wishes and wants that are different than other people. And those desires and wishes mean something. So I would just encourage you to care about those things. For me, I get very overwhelmed with city noise, but the constant chirping of ducks and chickens, the mooing of cows, the sound of the woodpeckers on the trees, that to me brings peace and healing to my soul, which makes life more tolerable for me. So what are those things for you? Have you thought about that stuff recently? Have you ever thought about those things? You can always start today. I love you, friends.